Hey, it's Mike Hambright with FlipNerd.com. Welcome back for another exciting expert interview where I interview successful real estate investing experts and entrepreneurs in our industry to help you learn and grow. By the way, if you happen to be looking for off-market wholesale deals, we have hundreds of them on FlipNerd.com right now, and you can get an account for free in about 30 seconds. So go to FlipNerd.com if you're not already a member. Today I'm joined by Randy Hughes. He's known as Mr. Land Trust. Randy's been a full-time real estate investor for over 45 years. And a lot of veteran real estate investors over time, as it passes, as you mature in your life, as you get closer to retirement, as you build up your rental portfolio and things like that, you start to think a lot more about privacy and asset protection as you worked hard to build up what you've built, and you don't want that to get taken away from you somehow. And you really don't want people bothering you. There's a big element of privacy that you can benefit from with land trusts. So today we're going to talk about Randy's area of expertise, which is land trusts, in an episode that we're going to call Land Trusts Made Simple. It's a great tool to help protect what you've worked so hard for. Before we get started with Randy today, let's take a moment to recognize our featured sponsors. RealtyMogul.com is an online marketplace for real estate investing, connecting borrowers and capital from accredited and institutional investors. Get a rehab loan fast and close in as little as 10 days with rates starting as low as 9%. For more information, call 888-296-1697. B2R Finance makes loans tailored specifically for rental investors. They can help you unlock equity from existing properties so you can get cash to grow your rental portfolio. That's huge, and it opens up lots of opportunities previously not available to rental investors. Need a loan? Call 855-819-4412 or visit b2rfinance.com today. National Real Estate Insurance Group is the nation's leading provider of insurance to the residential real estate investor market. From individual properties to large-scale investors, National Real Estate Insurance Group is ready to serve you. We'd also like to thank Crestar Funding, Mid-Atlantic IRA, and Renters Warehouse. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by the individuals in this program do not necessarily reflect those of FlipNerd.com or any of its partners, advertisers, or affiliates. Please consult professionals before making any investment or tax decisions, as real estate investing can be risky. Hey, Randy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Glad to have you back. You were on a little over a year ago, and we talked about land trust a little bit then as well. And I know you've got a story to share with us, too, of something that actually happened since then that actually protected you from potentially massive losses. So we'll get back to that in a second.
Okay, good.
But before we get started, for those that aren't familiar with you, maybe you could introduce yourself and then just talk at a real high level about the kind of importance of land trusts and why you started using them yourself.
Okay, well, I started buying houses, single-family houses, as an investment vehicle. When I was in college, I was 19 years old when I bought my first house, and continued buying houses after graduation. And pretty much have been a house guy all this last 45 years. I have invested in apartment buildings and shopping centers and commercial buildings, like restaurant buildings and that sort of thing. But over the years, I realized that the single-family house fits my personality the best, and I got the best rate of renewals. And what I mean by that is, when I owned apartment buildings, they were on campus, on a university campus, and while you can make good money in that business, you have basically 100% turnover every year.
Yeah.
And I don't like that much turnover. It's too much work. So I have just evolved into nothing but single-family homes, and I do still have the shopping center that I bought a long time ago. So the single-family homes, we have a turnover rate of about 15 to 20% a year, so 80 to 85% renew, and I like that. That's I can handle that, and that allows me to live another life other than constant management. Because I do my own management along with one full-time employee. So I've just accumulated those houses, many of them over the years. I'm a buy and hold guy. I do sell once in a while. When my daughter gets married, I got to cash something in, or daughter goes to college, I got to cash something in, but
Yeah.
basically I like to buy and hold and let those tenants pay down. But it was probably, I think I had about 15 single family houses in my name back in the late 70s when I attended a privacy and asset protection seminar. And my eyes were opened wide as to the risks that I was taking by owning real estate in my own personal name. And I quickly found out that there really are no advantages to owning real estate, putting your name on the title and the deed. There are no advantages to it. There are only disadvantages because you get all the same tax benefits even if you put it in trust. You just don't have the same amount of liability. And so that really opened my eyes and made me sit back and start looking for ways to hold title other than in my own personal name.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a corporation. Back in those days, there were no LLCs, but I did discover the land trust and have been using them ever since.
Yeah. And I know that here's what I know is that there's a lot of people that don't use them, obviously. And when you talk about it, they're interested. Wow, that sounds like it's a great thing. Yeah, I've been meaning to do that. And they just don't get around to it. It's just life gets in the way or things get in the way. But I don't think I've ever met anybody that uses land trusts that regrets doing it. They never say, yeah, I did them for a while, but I stopped because there's no, that I've never heard that personally.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I've never either. It's an interesting perspective.
Yeah. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what a land trust is, and then maybe you could tell us the story that you kind of mentioned to me briefly before we started that happened to you over the past year.
Okay. Well, a land trust is really nothing more than just a few pieces of paper. You need a deed and you need a trust agreement. Those are the two documents that create a land trust. The trust agreement could be written on the back of a napkin, or it could be 100 pages long, just depending on how much meat you want to pack into it. The deed is called a deed in trust, and it's very similar to a warranty deed, but it's got a little different language that helps create the trust. So it's really not as intimidating as it might sound. All you do is form your trust agreement, and then you file the deed, and it's done. It's either taken out of your name and put into the trust at that point, or the smart way of buying real estate is to take title directly from the seller to your trust and never go on the chain of title. That's the best way to do it. But for those of you investors out there that already have real estate in your name, it's still very, very important that you get it out of your name for a whole bunch of reasons. In fact, I keep getting asked the same questions over and over about land trusts, and so I've sat down about 10 years ago, and I wrote a booklet called 32 Reasons to Use a Land Trust. And then I revised that about a year or two ago, and now it's called 50 Reasons to Use a Land Trust.
Okay.
And it's because not only do I discover new and creative ways of using these trusts, but a lot of my students do, and they tell me about it. Yeah. But certainly the number one reason to use a land trust is privacy of ownership. Because if you get your name out of those county courthouse records, it will save you a lot of problems, all the way from avoiding identity theft to avoiding liens and judgments on the property that's held in the trust. So there are just a whole bunch of reasons. And in fact, if any of your listeners and watchers, Mike, want a copy of that book, The 50 Reasons to Use a Land Trust, I'd be glad to send it to them for free. All they have to do is send me an email.
Yeah. Randy, let me ask you this. In terms of liens specifically, so I have a bunch of rental properties, and we get, what happens most often is we'll find out that I don't know that we had too many issues with liens because we've always kind of caught it beforehand. But of course, who knows until you go to sell a property what might be on there. But we get code compliance warnings all the time. And it's kind of messy. So in the market that I'm in, there are several cities, and every city handles it differently. Some of the cities, you have a certificate of occupancy that you have to get for each tenant. So I have a separate property manager. So their name is on the certificate of occupancy. So if there's a code compliance issue, some of the times, it's not that consistent, it goes to my property manager. Some of the times it comes to us. And some of the times we get it, something in the mail that says that somebody, the grass is too long and it needs to be fixed by this date. And we're like, well, that date was yesterday. Like, what am I going to do now? So you're always kind of at risk of getting, liens put against your property for silly stuff with tenants that you just really can't control. So are you saying if you have your property in a land trust, they wouldn't be able to apply those liens against it?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
There are different types of liens. Let's talk about that, Mike.
I see.
For example, if you put your rental property into a land trust, and then you go out and hire a contractor to put a new roof on the house and you don't pay him, he can lien the house.
Yeah.
What I mean by avoiding liens and judgments is that there are many people out there in the United States, especially since we've just gone through this terrible economic situation. Many people out there that lost their home, lost their business, defaulted, foreclosed on, and they have liens and judgments against them personally. And if they go out and buy a piece of real estate today and put it in their name, the lien or judgment against them personally will immediately attach to the real estate. And so pretty much it puts them out of business if they're wanting to be involved in investment real estate.
Yeah, I see.
But if they put it into a land trust, if they take title of the real estate into a land trust, liens and judgments filed against them will not attach to that property.
I see.
And now, if you don't mind, maybe it's a good time to explain what I experienced personally.
Sure,
on the shopping center.
Absolutely.
35 years ago, a friend of mine and I decided to buy this shopping center. It's a 50,000 square foot shopping center in the town where I live. I insisted on putting it in a land trust, so we did, and we became co-beneficiaries to the land trust. Now, in the year 2000, he moved out of town, moved to Florida. Was a big-time real estate developer, made millions of dollars, was very successful until the crash. And in 2008, his world came crashing down, and he's been struggling ever since. Last summer, I think it was August of last year, I was reading the liens and judgments that are filed in my county, and I saw his name pop up. And a bank out of Florida filed a $3.4 million lien against him in my county here in Illinois. Now, why did they do that? Well, I'm sure they filed it in the county where he lives in Florida also, but they knew he came from here. They suspected that he owned some real estate here, so they filed a judgment. It's called a memorandum of judgment in the county, which is like throwing a wet blanket over everything you own in the county in your name. Now, had I not insisted 35 years ago to put this shopping center in a land trust, that lien, that $3.4 million lien filed against him would have been immediately attached to the title that he and I owned, and I would have immediately lost 35 years of equity, 35 years of work, toil, investment, whatever you want to call it. It would have been gone in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
For something that I didn't do.
Right.
Just because I would have been on a title with somebody. So you never, never, never go on title with anybody. And in my opinion, you never go on title yourself either. Not with your spouse, not with your best friend, your business associate. There's just no advantage in owning real estate in your name personally.
Yeah. Yeah. A few questions I had about for folks that are listening. I'm trying to think of kind of objections that people would have to.
Okay.
I don't want to use a land trust because of this. So if you're borrowing money, let's say, for example, I have lines of credit with some different banks that I borrow from to buy rental properties. Would they lend if the property was in the name of a land trust, or how does that work?
Well, generally the answer is yes, but it depends on what kind of a loan you're getting, Mike. If the loan is being underwritten using the secondary market loan standards. So in other words, if it's going to be a federally backed loan, 30-year fixed rate, type thing, they will not let you close directly into your trust. You got to close in your name and sign 112 pieces of paper. They record it in your name, and then you transfer out of your name a week later into your trust.
Yeah. Okay.
But those secondary market loans are scarce. Bank of America, for example, will only allow you to have 4 of those. So what if you're going out to buy your 5th property, you can't go to Bank of America.
Right.
Some lenders will go up to 10, but I've not heard of any that goes more than 10. So if you're very active in this business, you're going to have to find another source for borrowing other than the secondary market.
Yeah, and by the way, those Fannie and Freddie type loans also won't even allow you to close in an LLC or an S corp or any other thing. They're only going to lend to you in your personal name. So it's fairly common practice for people to then deed that over to their entity name shortly after they close. So,
thank you for mentioning that. You're exactly right.
Right.
So what happens? Let's say you get your 4 loans, and they're great loans to get, and then you want to buy a 5th property. Then you have to go to what I call as a portfolio lender, which is I like to deal with hometown banks, regional banks, the small guys where I can walk in and see the president behind the glass in his office. Those folks will let you close directly into a trust, and that's the best way to do it. That way you never have your name on the title for any reason.
Right.
And so just, you need to find the right lender to work with, and then it's not a problem.
Yeah, and most of those, I don't say most of them. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure with my own banks, but I think that those types of banks that are keeping the loans in house, they know who you are. They tend to be more flexible in how they do things, and they tend to be, when you find the right bank, they're much more kind of real estate friendly because they understand it.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Well said. Well
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. So let's talk about. I guess how do people kind of get started with land trust? Because I know that, again, there's a few things that are like this that seem kind of daunting or overwhelming, and I know that after you know how to do them, you're like, from what I've heard from most people say, they're like, wow, this is actually easier than going through all these other processes. But I think it's kind of getting over that hump. So maybe kind of quell some fears or talk about how people kind of get started with using trusts.
Okay. Well, let me first say, Mike, that I use LLCs. I love LLCs, but not to hold title to real estate. And I know there's a whole bunch of people out there that have real estate in their LLCs because their attorney told them to. And all I'm saying is, don't title your real estate in an LLC. You need to put each piece of real estate into its own separate trust. So each property and each trust is insulated from the other. I mean, just think of it this way. If you have 10 properties held in one LLC, and you have a liability occur that's either uninsured or beyond your insurance coverage on one property, and you get sued and you lose, they're going to get the entire LLC if that LLC is holding title to the property. So you just tied up 10 properties because of one property's problem. So putting all your property in any one entity, whether it's a corporation, an LLC, or even a land trust, is creating a nexus for a lawsuit.
Right.
So, Grandma and Grandpa taught us you don't put all your eggs in one basket, and you don't put all your real estate in one entity.
Yeah.
So if you got 10 properties, you create 10 land trusts. Well, then you might come back and say, whoa, my goodness, that's going to be a lot of paperwork and be real expensive, isn't it? Actually, it isn't expensive at all because it costs nothing to form a land trust.
Hmm.
Unlike, if you created 10 LLCs, depending on what state you're in, if you're in California, that's $850 per LLC. That gets a little pricey.
Right.
So all these forms that I provide in my home study course are Word document forms that you just load them up on your computer and you fill in the blank and make a few minor decisions and you hit print. I mean, it takes me 10 minutes to create a land trust. And so it is something that you need some education on. I had a lady call me yesterday on my office line, and she said, how can I get the forms quickly for a land trust? And I said, well, ma'am, I don't sell the forms by themselves. Well, I just want the forms. I got to do this quick. And I said, well, that's like selling you a gun without training you how to shoot it. how do you know what you're going to be doing? If you got these forms, how do you know to fill them out? You have no education, no training. And she just didn't understand it. And we ended up just parting ways, because I'm not going to sell somebody a bunch of forms without teaching them how to fill the forms out.
Right.
But it is like riding a bike. Once you do it, then you wonder why you didn't do it 20 years ago, because it is so easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about some of the other benefits. I know you've got your book, 50 Reasons to Use Land Trust, but a couple things that I think are true in terms of, transferring those assets to family members. You kind of eliminate, correct me if I'm wrong here, you eliminate the need to go through probate and all those things in the event that something were to happen to you. I mean, talk about some of those benefits, kind of like to your family and to your legacy.
Yeah, well, that's a very good subject, and one really close to me right now, Mike. Because yes, putting your property in land trust means that if the beneficiary dies, the beneficial interest is immediately transferred to the successor beneficiary. And that does not happen if you hold title in your name. If you hold title of real estate in your name and you die, that real estate has to go through probate, which means it's going to be tied up for about a year, and there's going to be legal expenses and attorneys to deal with. And your heirs may need that cash flow. They may need that property to pay bills with, So by putting it in the land trust, then if the beneficiary dies, it immediately goes to the successor beneficiary, and they can make decisions today on what to do with that property.
Yeah.
So it works really well. Now, most real estate investors, because the liability on property that's held in a land trust flows through to the beneficiary, most real estate investors will make the beneficiary of their land trust an LLC or a corporation. And then they may be direct members of their LLC, or maybe their living trust could be direct members of the LLC. So there's a structure there that you want to think about. But my wife died in November of last year. We'd been married for 41 years. Everything that we'd accumulated had been for the benefit of both of us. And I learned firsthand just how important estate planning is, and using a land trust is in a up close and personal way. Everything flowed just the way we had planned for it to, and everything worked out really well. But I could see just how much of a nightmare it would have been, in addition to just losing her, but to having to deal with a financial calamity at the same time. So I was thankful that I'd set things up right.
Yes. I'm very sorry to hear about your wife, Randy.
Yeah, thanks.
What are some of the other kind of prominent reasons that people? I want to say, I think there's some people that have this belief that people are using land trusts to be able to kind of dodge their responsibilities and stuff from a privacy standpoint. I can tell you, I've been personally sued a few times for real estate transactions, not for rental properties. Fortunately, no issues there. But they've always been frivolous cases that some attorney took on because the person, the reason they went through it is because it was on contingency. So most attorneys will, they'll basically cast out some bait and see if they think they can make money on it, and that's why they do it on contingency, right? If the more work that those contingency-based attorneys see that it's going to be, the less likely they are to take a case on contingency, right?
Exactly.
And so whether you use a trust or there's other, you could form your entity in other states and make it harder for like a Texas attorney to go to Wyoming to sue somebody or any of those things. But part of it is just it's kind of a shield to get rid of those frivolous cases that might otherwise come your way, right?
You're exactly right, Mike. And I always tell my students that I don't teach them this information for them to go out and try to take advantage of somebody.
Yeah.
I teach it to them to defend themselves against our screwed up legal system here in the United States. I can give you another real life example, and I think real life means a lot to people that are listening as to whether they're going to take action and use these trusts. But real briefly, it was about 10 years ago, I sold a house that my wife and my two daughters and I lived in. And 6 months after we closed on the sale of that house, I got a letter from a lawyer saying that the buyer of the house had to replace an air conditioner and some flooring, and he had to replace all the toilets in the house. There were 6 toilets in this house. And if I would just send them a check for $8,000, they wouldn't sue me.
Yeah.
Oh, that really makes your day when you get a letter like that in the
Yeah.
mail. So I sent him a letter back, and I said, well, dear Mr. Lawyer, you must have mistaken me for the owner. I didn't own the property. And he sent me a letter back and said, well, if you just tell us who the owner is or was, we'll go after them and we won't sue you. So I sent him a letter back and I said, I'm not sure who the owner was. I think it was in some kind of a trust. I don't quite understand him really well, but I wish a lot of luck.
Good luck.
Good luck. And you know what? I never got a response.
Yeah.
That's a shakedown, Mike. That's exactly what's going on across America today. And I just refused to participate. And I can just imagine the conversation he had with his client after he got that last letter. Yeah. Well, Bob, this one isn't going to be as easy as the last 10 people that we sued. What do you want to do? Well, let's go on and get the low hanging fruit. This guy sounds like he's going to be too much trouble.
Right.
And so just by not owning property in my name, even though land trusts aren't designed to be great asset protection tools, they become accidentally an asset protection tool through a story like that shows you that you just put up some hurdles there and they'll go off and find somebody else to sue.
Right. Yeah. Well, can you talk a little bit about that's kind of separate, we talk about privacy and asset protection. Talk about some other kind of privacy benefits that you get. Of course, you don't have, you wouldn't probably get, do you have an address tied to the, like for example, because I have a bunch of rental properties, every day we get mounds of postcards and letters for people that want to buy our properties. I mean, does that,
yeah.
And it's really not that big of a deal. We throw them in the trash, and maybe get a few laughs out of the, poor quality of some of them. But does it, do you still have an address typically tied to those trusts where people can still send you mail and other things?
Well, yes, and on any deed, as you know, Mike, when you record a deed, you got to put an address on there for the tax bill.
Right.
And so we use a property management company's PO box for all mail to go through, so it's filtered through that.
Okay.
But I think what you're getting at, let me tell you another story.
Yeah, just private. Elaborate on the privacy part of it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. When you don't represent to the world that you're the owner, and in fact, when you put your property in trust, you're not the owner, it changes the complexion of your relationship with tenants, and especially. Last summer it was, I've got 10 condominiums in this little complex. Each one's put in a separate land trust, but they're all in a complex. And last summer we were having the police called to this complex way too often. And so when I investigated what was going on, I found that no matter what the problem was, there was always the little things. No matter when the police were called, no matter who else was involved, she was always involved. And so when her lease came up for renewal last August 1st, I told her, we're not renewing your lease. And she said, well, why not? And I said, because the owner told me not to, because of all the trouble you've caused around here with other tenants and the police coming and all that. Well, of course, she was upset, but that was pretty much the end of the conversation with me, because I'm just the property manager. I'm
Right.
not the owner. Leave me alone. I just, I hate my job like everybody else. I just can't wait till 5 o'clock to go to the bar. So she left me alone. But 3 days later, I get a call from the secretary, my attorney's secretary. She says, hey, Randy, there's a lady down here in our reception demanding to speak to your attorney. What do you want us to do about her? And I said, what's her name? And they told me, and I said, throw her out. She has no right to speak to him. But here's what she had done. She was so upset that her lease wasn't being renewed. She looked up online who was the owner of her condo. Then she looked up in the phone book and found out that the trustee of that trust was my attorney. And of course, he's listed in the phone book. So she marches down to his office and demands to talk to him about why her lease wasn't being renewed.
Yeah.
So you can see just how strong, how extreme some people get on these management issues.
Yeah.
For a number of years, I have 2 daughters. For a number of years, they were young and living at my house. The last thing I want is some irate tenant that I'm evicting because he's not paying his rent to look me up and come knocking on my door, and my 7-year-old daughter answer the door.
Yeah.
Had a lady call me last year from Florida, a lady landlord. She said, Randy, how do I get your home study course fast? And I said, well, what's the hurry? She said, I own 8 rental properties down here in Florida, plus the house I live in. And one of my tenants is a man. He's interested in me. I'm not interested in him. And I just had one of my tenants call me and say that he came looking for me at their house. So what he's done is he's looked up online everything she owns. He's going house to house, trying to find where she lives personally. Now, we're talking some serious stalking here, Mike. Yeah. So these stories are real. If you live long enough in this business, you're going to experience some of this stuff. And if you don't want to protect yourself, you're going to pay a dear price.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to do. It's not expensive to do. Please do it.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, talk about a phenomenon like that where if you already have properties in your name and then you transfer them into a land trust, people can obviously kind of go back further and maybe see you. I mean, is there anything you can? How much? It wouldn't offer obviously as much protection as if you'd put it in there in the first place, but kind of talk about that issue of transferring it over and people still being able to kind of go back in the chain of ownership and see who was before them.
If you're in the chain of title, you can't do anything about that. But once you get out of the chain of title and transfer to a trust, you can't assume that person that transferred out of their name is the beneficiary of the trust. I may be the beneficiary of the trust,
right? Because
my trust may have bought it from you. So, to make that leap to say that you're the beneficiary of the trust is unrealistic. Now, furthermore, the trust agreement on a land trust is not recorded anywhere. So nobody, until they sue somebody and go through a lot of legal expense and probably a year or two in legal wranglings, will be able to find out who the beneficiary of that trust is. So if it's in your name, there are 50 reasons to get it out of your name. Yes, it's not the best thing. The best is to take title directly from the seller to your trust, but my gosh, don't hesitate just because you're thinking, well, somebody's going to assume that I'm the beneficiary of the trust.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
As a reason not to do it.
Absolutely.
If you want to make it look better, you can sell that property to your trustee on an installment contract with no payments and no interest for 5 years, and record that and make it all look real legit, and it is legit. The only reason why I do it that way without payments or interest is you don't have to report the sale to the IRS until the first dollar is received.
I see.
So if I don't receive $1, I don't have to report it as a sale, yet it's legally been a sale on the books in the courthouse records. So, there are ways, and I discuss these ways in my home study courses about how to do this creatively.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're going to add some links down below the video here for folks that want to learn more, Randy, but definitely appreciate you being with us here today and sharing your insights. And I think everybody listening to this right now, a lot of folks that have been around for a while, they understand the importance of protecting those assets because, we work hard in this business and you don't want to get to a point to where you feel like the feeling that somebody could take it all away from you is not a good feeling.
No, it isn't. The older you get, the worse that feeling is.
Yeah. Well, Randy, thanks again for being with us today. Definitely appreciate your time and great to see you, my friend.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your time.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Are you a member of FlipNerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit FlipNerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry, so get on over to FlipNerd.com.